Welcome all. It's Coleman Report Live, April 6th edition. We have Matt and Paul here. I don't know if everybody knows everybody. Paul, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Paul Mirsky. I'm the Executive Vice President for Congressional Relations and Strategy at the Independent Community Bankers of America. We have approximately 5,000 community bank members around the country and represent their interests.
Thanks. And a lot of our people already know Matt, or I just keep saying your name. Sorry, Chris.
I know. We got to fix that.
Yeah. This is Chris. He's the CEO and founder of Fountainhead, correct?
Yes. Thank you, Katie. One day we'll fix that.
As a lot of people know, we got the certificate in the handouts. And why don't we get an update? So what happened over the weekend?
Paul, you want to take it or you want me to?
Sure. Well, I'll jump in there. As we all know, the initial rollout of the Paycheck Protection Program was on Friday. A lot of fits and starts on that program. We had a lot of frustrated bankers around the country trying to get through on the SBA's portal. So over the weekend, we sent the letter up to Treasury and the SBA, Federal Reserve, requesting some changes to the program, improvements to the portal, and also asking for a couple other things. One, that the Federal Reserve creates a liquidity facility for banks that produce these loans so they'll be able to sell them off and make new loans and keep that credit flowing. And two, already asked for a request to ask Congress for additional funding for these SBA loan programs. We think once the largest lenders are fully online, that the $349 billion will be used up very quickly, and would like to have the opportunity to keep this funding flowing out there to small businesses that really need it.
I would agree with what Paul said. Obviously, we're kind of in a unique situation that we're one of the nation's, there's very few of us small business lending companies. So I think we're very analogous with a community bank. We also have been sending up information to Washington for a couple weeks now, back when it was a proposed bill, became law, and now the guidelines, multiple versions. I strongly believe one of the most important things, in addition to issuing final rules, that basically grow or add on to the IFR that was released Thursday night, is we absolutely need a liquidity mechanism for this paper. Even with this morning's news that even Wells Fargo, which I think is the fourth or fifth largest bank in the country, has said we're stopping at 10 billion. That's a bit disconcerting, and I've certainly been telling people for quite some time that this is the missing piece of the puzzle. If you want the funds to flow freely, then you need to fix this piece, and it needs to happen quickly. If you expect community banks or non-bank lenders that are national like myself to hold this paper for 7 to 9 weeks, which is what it suggested in the IFR, which seemed to depart from what was in the law of 2 weeks, it's going to be a real problem, particularly when we're still trying to guess what it takes to close or fund one of these loans. And apparently, I was just on another webinar, and apparently there may have been some updates here in the last hour and a half where there's a lot more documentation that seems to be required. And so I haven't had a chance yet to confirm that, but it wouldn't shock me. And of course, that will probably further contribute to the chaos. Unfortunately, it's really not a good situation for all around, and everybody had the best of intentions, and that's what's a little disappointing. And we just, as lenders, and I'm sure Paul would agree with me, we need a little patience. We want to help, but it doesn't help to barrage us with, have we processed yet? Have you started yet? When am I going to get? This is what lenders have been dealing with. If you work this weekend, I think I worked 16 or 17 hours both days, and I still don't feel like I've quite dug out just yet. So it's a tough situation for everybody, clearly.
All right. Well, there's definitely a lot of frustrations out there. There's still a number of key questions that have to be answered, or more specific guidance provided by the SBA before a lot of lenders are willing to make these loans. Community banks want to have more certainty of what they're doing is correct, so that 100% guarantee when it attaches will be there for them. And that is creating frustration with the borrowers. The small businesses really think that free money is out there, and they're trying to get their loans processed as quickly as possible. So, this is basically the second day that this has been in motion with the SBA. So hopefully today and throughout the week, it'll get better every day and more information that's needed. Specifically, there's a lot of confusion of exactly what you include in that employment payroll numbers, what exactly is counted there, and I think more guidance needs to be put out on that.
For sure.
Anything else to add?
No, I concur with what Paul's saying. I mean, there's I've got 2.5 pages of questions and clarifications and recommendations.
And I'm sure they're just gonna keep coming in this week until we'll know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, this is a complicated. This was the biggest law ever. It was done in 9 days, which is tremendously commendable. And then there was immense pressure put on the agency to make sense of it. That's what the agency would do on a piece of legislation or a law to actually implement it. And to try to do it in 7 days, I don't know that that's ever happened. And I've been telling people for at least a week or two that there's going to be multiple iterations of this. And unfortunately, we're seeing this roll out. And I have a feeling there's going to be some of these lenders who maybe got somehow, like they're on the West Coast on Friday and they were able to get through E-Tran and get a loan number and maybe even made some assumptions about closing documents and funding documents and went ahead and did it and actually funded the loan. Again, best of intentions, but now they may be going back to collect more documents in order to, as Paul said, attach to this program and this 100% guarantee. It's just, we held back, which it sounds like a lot of the ICBA members did as well, because it was a tough call for us to make. We made it Thursday night after we digested the IFR, and I think it was the appropriate thing to do because there's too many unknowns, and we need that clear guidance so that we properly comply with the program and we don't do anything to imperil ourselves or the agency or frankly the U.S. taxpayer, who's going to be the backstop on these things. Even as much as we want to help, we have to do things the right way.
We have about 50 FAQs, frequently asked questions, up on our website, icba.org. That seems to be growing every day of how many questions and answers we're trying to put out there on the program. But maybe someone knows the answer to this, but it's still unclear whether the bank uses its own note or is there something forthcoming from the SBA?
Well, there's a standard SBA note in normal times for a 7A, and we're assuming that is acceptable. But again, to your point, Paul, we don't have the final guidance on that. Yeah.
Right. So our banks, some banks are using their own paperwork, kind of like a low doc program, using their own notes. Hopefully that will be acceptable, but that seems to be a big question before, money's going out the door of the bank. They want to make sure, the promissory note is the right one. Also, another big question that keeps coming up is what do you do with key bank employees, directors? Are there affiliations with other businesses preventing them from doing these loans? There seems to be a conflict of the guidance and the attestations when you start processing the loans and start processing the application to be a SBA lender. There's a lot of conflicting guidance of conflicts of interest with small businesses. And I know for community banks around the country, a number of their directors are actually the small business owners in the communities as well. So it's unclear what type of lending can be done under those circumstances.
Yep. I've heard from several situations like that where people have reached out to me in the last few days and said, we're taking the prudent, conservative approach to this. I've got a business, but I'm on the bank board. I'm an investor in the bank, and we want to work with you guys since you're a non-bank participating SBA lender. And we don't know. We don't know the answers yet, to Paul's point, but maybe that's the more conservative approach, perhaps, under these uncertain times.
Right. And there's a second phase to this, which was supposed to be rolled out on April 10th, I think, for independent contractors.
Yeah. Yep. That's right.
Mm.
Which is
So-
also causing a lot of confusion because the IFR seem to differ with the law, and we don't have final guidance on that either. And yet we're supposed to crank that up on Friday. So again, tough place that a lot of people are in. SBA is in a tough spot. The lending community's in a tough spot. The borrowers are obviously in a tough spot, and it's a bit chaotic at the moment. And we need some guidance. We need some leadership. We need some certainty, and just to cut through some of this. That's what we need right now.
Right. But we've been intaking a lot of questions directly from community bankers around the country and trying our best to get answers out them. Everyone wants to make this program work. I think everyone involved from the lending community wants to ensure that this $349 billion program is a success. We want it to be successful, but we need the proper guidance, the proper tools to make it a success.
That's right.
Well, and I think it's important too for the small businesses now, because a lot of them are getting mixed information too, and they're probably just as frustrated. I wrote up a little bit of a thing. I don't know if we have the next slide ready. Yelp put out a coronavirus economic impact report, and I didn't even know Yelp did this. They regularly collect this data to try to find out what people are using, what people are still very interested in, and what people are not as interested in. And I thought it was interesting because there are some businesses that are doing quite well in this economy right now. There's fitness and exercise equipment is up 547%, which makes sense. A lot of people can't go to the gyms and they want to, still stay healthy and everything. Community-supported agriculture is up 455%. That's also very significant, and obviously that's related to everything that's going on. I thought
I'm sorry. I was going to say, why did they call out French restaurants? I mean, does that?
I don't.
Are they picking on the French?
Yeah.
What's that about?
Yeah, I don't know. The hot pot spots too. They're very specific on some of them. So.
Yeah.
I thought the one that's funny and it's not on here. Supernatural readings are up 134%.
Well, somebody's looking for certainty somewhere, right?
Yeah. Down, of course, we're seeing, breweries are not doing well. Bridal stores are not doing well. Sewing and alterations. I thought it was kind of interesting, and I don't know how it's going to impact us later. Financial advising is down about 20%. I don't know how that's going to affect businesses later on when they're not getting that before or during this whole getting new loans and everything. But we'll definitely see.
Right. Well, one thing for the small businesses that I think there's some confusion. I'm calling this a payroll loan. You have to be very careful that this is not a loan that you can forgive unless it's actually used for payroll. So when the guidance came out on Thursday, they really tightened that up and made sure that you have to certify up front when you're asking for the loan that this will be used for payroll. So it's not that you get the money and then afterwards you may or may not use it for payroll to get forgiven. You have to be very clear with the borrower up front that you're borrowing this money for payroll.
Right. Yep.
Right. And we're seeing that here too. I was just kind of scrolling through our local news, and they're kind of reporting that these are just money just being handed out, and it's not really that. And people are getting very confused.
Right. There's a few other uses you could use the loan for to be forgiven. Rent and utilities, but it's very narrow. So if you're taking this loan out, you best be using it for your employees' salaries and wages if you're going to try to get that loan forgiveness. And, there's several other SBA loan programs that might actually be a better fit than the PPP program if you're not just using it for salaries and wages.
Right.
Perhaps. I mean, I think, but we've gotten guidance from SBA that they're really predominantly focused on this right now. So yes, it's possible. I guess you could try to get a normal 7A loan right now, maybe for working capital purposes or other things. I'm not sure too many people are going to be out getting an SBA 504 right now, just because of the use of proceeds on a 504 potentially. But it's possible. It's just I think you ought to set expectations that probably approval times are going to be significantly slowed down, while the lending community and SBA are mostly focused on PPP, despite the stumble out of the starting gates here.
All right. Well, that's a good point, because the other loans will have to go through the typical underwriting process that takes quite a while. Whereas the PPP loans, if you follow the 2 or 3 criteria to get the loan, there's no underwriting, there's no collateral, there's no credit score check, all that stuff. So you could process a PPP loan without doing the time-consuming underwriting that all these other loans would take. So if you're a small business owner and you need that money quickly, the PPP loan, at least in theory, should be pretty quick.
Yep, exactly.
Well,
So let's hope the guidance comes quickly, Paul and Katie. That's the most important thing right now.
Kind of wrapping up, we have a couple webinars coming up. I don't know if we've kind of skipped past that a little. There we go. So here are webinars. We have one on April 8th, deferring and servicing. That's going to be great with the new rules. April 15th and April 22nd. I don't know, the 22nd one might end up getting pushed back a little bit, but there's some great opportunities there. And also we're trying to get back to people with questions, and hopefully Bob and Lance will be able to answer some of those later this week. And with that, I think that's everything.
Great.
Okay.
Well,
thanks for having us.
One other point, I know that the Federal Reserve has over $400 billion to do lending as well. So they're in the process of putting together a lending program that they want to do loans through the banks for larger businesses, mid-sized businesses, maybe if you have over 500 employees. So that should be coming online in the next few weeks. But the Federal Reserve wants to do a loan program working with the banks as well.
I'm sure we'll learn more about that in the coming week. So thank you so much for being on today.
Hey,
sorry we didn't have Bob on today, but he'll be in soon.
Good luck to everyone.
Yep, stay healthy.
Have a good week. Stay healthy.
Take care.